Let's go. Let's go, man. Hunt the ball. Let's go, family on three. 1, 2, 3, family.
Hello, football family. Welcome into Huddle It Up Films, NFL Draft Barbecue. That's Big Board Questions. And today, special guest on the show, Skepticgoat. You guys know him. You've probably seen him. We got the famous logo up there. And, as much as Skep wanted to be on here and show his face, he couldn't because, Skep, you're handling the grill right now, from what I understand.
That will be correct, sir.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't let just anybody, Skep, handle the grill. You know that's serious business. So when you talk about the trust factor, Skepticgoat all day, all night. He's going to be working any kind of meats that you like. Skep, I have to ask you, first of all, your Twitter handle, very popular on Twitter, very underrated account, a lot of interactions. In fact, Ken McCusick, I just did a show with him, and he said, tell Skepticgoat I said hello. So he was really happy that you were on the program. But can you just give your Twitter handle and anything else you're thinking about working on? What's been on your mind lately?
Well, first off, thank you for having me. You are one of my favorites. You know that. Now the world knows that. I'm always talking about you. It is an honor to be on your show because you've had so many people on here that I respect. Ken, Garnett, excuse me, Jacob. You've had a lot of guys on here that are well respected within the Ravens community. So for me to grace the stage and hang out with you for a little bit is beyond an honor. But yeah, I mean, you can find me on Twitter at Skepticgoat. Right now I have a project I'm working on, but if you follow me, you'll find out about it here soon. But yeah, I'm a simple guy doing simple things and being called an idiot on Twitter like most people who give their opinions.
I mean, it happens. It happens.
Oh, man.
I said something the other day about I didn't like the new wall at Camden Yards because, as you might know, you might not even be a baseball fan, Skep, but they built stadiums after Camden Yards. It was so groundbreaking. So 30 years into Camden Yards, they decided to scoot the left field wall back and make a little mini green monster there. And it's like, I call it the Mona Lisa's botched nose job. And I've been called an idiot for this, but I'm not afraid of change. I'm going to put that out there right now. People say, oh, you're old man stuck in his ways. You don't mess with perfection. You know what I mean? You don't mess with perfection. Yeah. So that's my own personal opinion. I've been getting heat for, but Skep, what about you at the barbecue, man? Like, let us into, everybody, the man of mystery, Skepticgoat. Let us know, like, either whether you're the host or whether you're going to the party. What's the vibe like? Are you Mr. Talkative? You there to eat? Are you drinking? Are you dancing? Give me a day in the life of Skep.
Oh, wow. So for me, I'm definitely hosting whenever I can. I love to see people have a good time. I love the setup. I like to exist in the background as much as possible and watch others enjoy themselves. But as the night goes on, you may see me out there on the dance floor, shaking it up a little bit, but not until I've made sure that everyone else is having a good time and everyone's well fed. But
so can you do the gritty, Skep? That's what I want to know.
I could, but I can't guarantee that I may not pull a calf muscle or, risk an ACL tear. So
you stretch out is what you're saying.
I need to stretch. I'm going to need to stretch.
You know what? One dance I can do now. This is, man, you're really bringing it out of me now. The kid and play kick step. Believe it or not.
Oh, you can do that still?
I can. Well, I haven't done that in quite a while, but I'm gonna just go on the record and say, oh yeah, I can nail that thing.
I can do it.
Kid and play kick. Well, when we meet up one day, we'll do the kid and play kick step. And remember, you got to lock your right legs and do the 180 hop around, and then go take it back. Yeah. House Party 2 for any fans out there. Our generation, Skep. Good movie.
Sir. Yes, sir. The best generation.
That's right. So, Skep, you might have saw Dev on his way out, and Garnett just got here and all that. What kind of players are you thinking about? Who you've been talking about with the fellows? Who's on your mind? Kick it off. Let's start barbecuing and talk about some of these players on our board.
Let's do this. Well, I'm out on the island by myself to a large extent, so let's get that out of the way. My opinions are relatively unique. That draws people to me, and it also draws stones towards me at times. But yeah, so I'm going to start with my main guy to protect my other main guy, Lamar Jackson. I like Tyler Smith out of Tulsa. He's a controversial figure because of his hands. Let's just get that out of the way. He has horrible hand placement. No mystery there. Anybody who knows what they're looking for in a tackle won't like what he does with his hands. They're pretty wide. They get outside. It's a setup to get holding calls on you in the NFL. He got a lot of them in college football. But whenever I'm looking at offensive talent or any position, in almost any sport, I start with the feet. And the man does not have horrible feet. He does a great job of locking on to defenders. He does a good job of removing his guy from being able to make a play. And that's the kind of stuff you're looking for. You want a guy that's going to dominate and erase his guy from being able to make plays during the game. And Tyler's up there for me. There's a couple things about Tyler that I really like. If you watch him against Ohio State, and you don't often get a chance to see this with top talent, you got a chance to see what it looked like when he came out of the game, because number 79 came in a different series to replace him, and it was open season on the quarterback. They had a field day whenever he was off the field. So you got a chance to see in the same game against the same talent what happens when he's out there versus when he's not. And to me, that kind of showed the difference in the level of talent, because the guy behind him actually is pretty athletic. Number 79 is pretty athletic. But he wasn't as effective at erasing his guy from being able to make plays. What do you think about Tyler?
Man, I got to tell you, I have him at number 42 on my board, which is higher, I think, than most. I think I'm higher on him than most. The hands, you mean, obviously, yeah, that's why you said it first. Not only are they wide, but they're low. And, usually on hand placement and things like this, Skep, maybe I'll have you respond to this right now, actually, before I go on. Those are things that I say, all right, get him in the NFL, let him work with Joe D. He's going to be fine with that. But the thing that holds me back a little bit with Tyler Smith is that you look at his teammates, and quite frankly, Skep, if you just watch football or a football fan growing up, like, not to hold your hands down and wide. So it's like he's so far off in the hand placement. It's not something subtle. He's got to tear that thing down and build it back up. That's the only thing that's really holding me back at 42. So I have some good things to say about him, but I want you to, if you could, what do you think about that, man?
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something that's said a lot about Tyler. And more specifically, they compare him to his teammate, the right tackle. Played
Chris
in the
Paul.
system. Yeah, and he's improved his technique almost every year he's been in the system. And that's often cited for, well, what's wrong with Tyler if he couldn't improve, but his teammate could? Maybe that means there's something wrong with Tyler. Well, there's another way to look at that. Tyler's a very gifted athlete, and sometimes the gifted aren't that technical because they can get away with it. And so
right.
The thing about it is that he may not have to change, and he may not have been forced to have changed because he was still effective. He was still getting the job done. He still was way better than most guys in college football that play that position. He's not top of the food chain at offensive tackle, but he's way better than most who suit up and play that position. And so for me, that's the way I look at it, that, he won't be going to sociology classes. He won't have to worry about dealing with professors and stuff. He will deal with football once he gets to the NFL. And he seems like a smart kid. If he's committed to getting better, I think that working on your hand placement, even though I do agree it's very low, it's very wide, it's something that can be done if you're committed. And he's worth taking a chance on because his feet aren't bad. And the one thing I will say about it is his base is that sometimes in his pass set, he's a little bit high and he's leaning back a little bit. And I don't like that. But again, that's relatively subtle. I've not seen him get bull rushed and just blown back, and that shows how strong he must be in his lower body to where he could get away with doing that, where most people couldn't. They paid the ultimate price. So that's what I feel about it. Maybe he's just a gifted athlete.
He's got that upper body strength too. We can't go on without mentioning how he's got that nasty mean streak in him, like
Oh
you
yeah,
would see from Orlando Brown Senior, a little bit in Junior too. But like he, all the things that people notice about Penning applies to Tyler Smith. Tyler Smith's just got really great feet, and I want to make another analogy. It's kind of like to back up your point, a wide receiver that has great speed is usually slow on the curve of route running because he's just been able to outrun everybody his whole life. So, like what you're talking about with Tyler, great feet, like McCary like feet. He's got really, really good feet, obvious quickness, obvious physical ability. That's why, even though I have him at 42 on my board, if the Ravens found themselves in like a trade back position or something shakes out on draft day,
exactly.
I could see him being taken at like pick 31 or 32 to get that extra year of control and just say, hey, look, maybe this year, we're going to have to break down his, his technique and fundamentals and, not redshirt him because if somebody goes down, he's going to have to play. But, take that gamble and get that extra year of control on such a strong guy with good feet. I mean, he's everything you want athletically in a tackle. A guy like Evan Neal, I have number 3 on my board, so technically sound, so clean as a prospect. Tyler's like the opposite. He's got all the upside that you want. He's just lacking on the basics, man. So I like the pick. I mean, you're confident that at the pro level, when he has all that, college stuff, he can just concentrate on being a pro. You expect him to be a pretty good player in this league.
I do, and I like your idea of getting him back into the first because I think that's why I have him at the highest, back into the first, and for that same reason, because you want to get the 5th year on those players that are going to cost you the most in the future, and an offensive tackle that's a premium position, and if you got a really really good one, it's going to cost you a lot. So if you could kick the can down the road just another year, you saved yourself millions on a kid like him. And again, not to redshirt him, but it gives him more time to grow into that NFL top-notch Pro Bowl caliber player where you can get the most juice out of him. But he's going to be good. I think he has a good chance to be good. And I agree with everything you said.
And Skep, one more thing in his favor, and you can't say, a lot of people say, oh, well, if he's a tackle, he can play guard. That doesn't go for everybody. These taller, like Charles Cross, I don't know. Like he's a little light in the pants for that. Evan Neal at the top's too tall. But Tyler, if he's still working on his hand placement and has some things to work on as a tackle, he's quick enough, big enough, strong enough, nasty enough to where he might end up being the best guard on the team year 1 and upgrade you there. So that's another thing in his plus in his category.
Well, that, and we can finish on this note here. You bringing that up, a lot of people who haven't been around that long as a Ravens fan or may not remember, Jonathan Ogden, All-Pro, perennial All-Pro, Hall of Famer, started his career guard. He did not come right in and start at left tackle. He started at guard, and he's 6'8", 6'9", huge. So it's possible. And I think that coming in, he could easily move our left guards out of the way and come in and make a name for himself there at guard if he had to temporarily before he went to tackle.
I mean, he's good enough. He's a better prospect than Cleveland or Phillips, was. So that's totally possible. I think we're on the same page. But Skep, there's another guy I wanted to ask you about because we've been talking about him a lot on the channel. Just got done doing Ken McCusic's show on Inside Linebackers. We talked about him again, and that's Devin Lloyd. I got him at number 18 on my board, which some people have told me is too high. I've had some people tell me it's too low. I think he's a 3-down linebacker, and I think me having him number 18 on my board is a huge compliment for him for a couple of reasons. Number one, the Ravens need a corner. We need an edge. We need a defensive lineman, and there are plenty of good ones available in that first round. So for me to even have Devin Lloyd in that mix, like way ahead of Nakobe Dean and Quay Walker, it tells you how much I love Devin Lloyd. So, I mean, what do you think about him? Am I right to like him that much, first of all?
I think you're beyond right to like him that much. I think it's very fair for him to be in 18 range, and a testament to how good he must be to get that level of respect from you. In the modern NFL, typically you're going to see only 2 inside linebackers go in the first round on average. That's usually what it is. And those guys are going to be always in the teens, oftentimes to the 20s. You're not going to have a lot of inside linebackers going in the top 10 anymore. It's just rare, just because of what the game requires of inside linebackers. The value just isn't there to go that high. But what I like about Devin Lloyd is a lot of people know he's a wide receiver who was converted to safety that was converted to inside linebacker. And you would think that that's impressive enough. But where he really gets impressive is when you go and watch the film. This guy didn't just play inside linebacker. He rushed the passer effectively from the interior. He also set the edge. This guy, 235 pounds, set the edge better than some guys we have on our roster right now. And so it was impressive that a guy with that type of a frame coming from a wide receiver background to safety, then the inside linebacker, was willing to be used anywhere along the defensive line except for nose guard. I mean, I saw him at a 5 technique. Um, I mean, I saw him inside line. I seen him rushing from the outside, the interior. You never see him really get blown up on his pass rush attempts. He plays with length, and that's another one of my criticisms of a lot of guys who are long, but they don't play with length. He effectively plays with length. He extends his arms, oftentimes keep blockers off of his body. He does a great job in a lot of different ways. His versatility, and so I'll say this: with the Ravens striking out at getting Zadarius, with the Ravens striking out at getting Wagner, with the Ravens being in a situation where Clark's getting close in, we have issues all throughout the defense, mostly in the interior of the defense at this point. And if you can get your hands on a guy that could almost make plays on 3 different levels of the defense, you want that guy on your team.
Yeah, I mean, he has the ability to be one of those rare guys like a Fred Warner is the first guy that comes to my mind as a comp, because they can do a lot of things. But you're mentioning something where a deeper point. I don't know how you feel about this, but I've been talking a lot lately about how the positionless defense is seeping its way into the NFL. So we have these off corners, these slot corners are safeties. And, is this guy a defensive end, or is he a defensive tackle, or does he play edge and early downs and sub rush inside? And we saw it last year with Micah Parsons. I think that might be the new body type where you're 230 and 240, but you're so physical, so long and strong that they can put you on the edge, because, I mean, it's more likely to be a pass than a run nowadays. But if they do run it and try to run it at you, a guy like Devin Lloyd is no pushover. He's going to, I think it was the USC game he did that, but the extension, the outside contain, the positioning, I mean, Skep, for a guy who is a converted wide receiver, his instincts at all over the field, both in off ball, on the line of scrimmage, or even on the edge, are like through the roof to me. I was telling MC Michael Crawford, he just seems like a completely clean prospect. Like, I don't worry about him in coverage. You mentioned the arm length, and I was doing this because his arms are always he's intimidating. I would imagine for a quarterback to see, man, I can't fit it in that tight window, because that guy Lloyd is just all over it. Devin Lloyd, man, what I wanted to ask you though, what do you think about this positionless defense? Are we going to get to a era where somebody plays off ball for the first 2 downs, say, and then comes in to rush on the edge, and you got yourself, that's how you use your 2 down linebacker. You bring another safety in to play off ball, and you just move this guy to rush linebacker or Sam linebacker?
Jason, it seems like you're living in my head. We see all of this exactly the same way. I feel exactly that is why I'm so high on Lloyd, because I feel like he plays well in the new NFL. He is a guy that you can't put him into bad situations with your personnel group. You can't put him in a situation where he has to come off the field on 3rd downs, or he's not as good on 1st and 2nd down. He can stay on the field all 3 downs, and he could be effective, and he could be a booger for offensive coordinators to find in the scheme against, because you never know where he's going to line up. And when you have guys like that, you're putting the odds in your favor. And I like that about Lloyd. Lloyd's length doesn't just help him getting off of blocks. Lloyd's length allows him to bat passes a lot. And it also helps shrink some of those passing lanes for quarterbacks. I mean, his zone coverage, he's not necessarily the best, but his wide receiver skills come into play. I don't know how many interceptions he had, but maybe 4 or so. interceptions.
Yeah, and one was I think two were a touchdown actually.
Yeah,
One
and
was one
that
was at the
USC
goal line.
game.
I remember. Yeah,
But in that USC game that you were talking about earlier, where he did a great job of setting the edge. I mean, it's just he exists at so many different places on the field and on so many different levels at a relatively high level. I've said this before, and there's few prospects that come along, but Devin Lloyd's one of those guys I think may be a better pro than he was in college because his college coaches were relatively lazy and they relied on his versatility to let them off the hook. And I feel like Marlon Humphrey was victim of that this last year, where he was used in a way where his ability to do so many things worked against him, and he wasn't
yep.
allowed to just play corner. And it, so I feel like Lloyd was a victim of that in college, and I think he'd be in a better spot in the NFL.
Skep, it's funny you mentioned that because on our game reviews and game preview shows, when Marlo was quote unquote struggling, Jake, Garnett, and I were saying the same thing. Just leave him on the boundaries and let him bat down balls, on an island. Like we're asking him. The man looked wore out. It was like, okay, Marlon, here's the number one, and he lines up here. You shadow him in the slot, in this, in here, and then of course with Marcus not there, the whole thing fell apart. But yes, Trayvon Walker, by the way, is another guy I think that will be a better pro.
Oh yes,
than he was a college player, just because his skills play, his athletic skills. But I want to let you answer this one for me because I've been asked about Devin Lloyd. 4.66 40. I don't see it on tape. Maybe it has to do with his instincts, but I see him making plays all over the field. What do you make of that number?
Well, there you go. You're speaking my language again. His instincts, his feel for the game is up there. It's top notch. I don't see 4.66 on the field. There's some guys who don't train the 40. A lot of those 40 times that people are seeing are the result of people training to run a 40, which is not football. The 40 is not football. Sorry to shatter that perception, false perception for a lot of the fans, but the 40 is not real football. And in this last combine and these pro days, what I noticed immediately, especially at the combine, so many of these guys have worked on their starts that most of those starts were amazing, even for the big guys. And you can knock a considerable amount of time off your 40 if you have a great start. And so I'm not that impressed by those 40s. I like to go off of what I see on film. I don't really care what the clock says. I care what the player says on the field with their own skills and how you navigate through the nonsense. And he does a great job. So, yeah. And his leadership. That's another thing that is underrated about him. A lot of people give Nakobe Dean credit for his leadership skills, which he has. But Devin Lloyd's leadership is very Raven-like. Ray Lewis would love to listen to that young man talk. So I always judge all Ravens players through the eyes of Ray Lewis. Would Ray want to play with that guy? And if I can't say yes, I don't want that guy as a Raven.
I like it.
Sorry.
Yeah, high standards, but I mean, there's truth to that too, because Ray wants somebody that's all about his teammates.
Oh, yeah.
That play for each other, play for one another. You always heard that. Do your job, be where you're supposed to be, dominate your man. Don't try to do other people's jobs. And that's important overall for the defense. And Skep, yeah, man. Well, I'm glad we're on the same page with the 40 time. What I like to do is watch the tape first and take my notes. And my notes on him was play speed good enough. Like, I didn't think it was exceptional. He didn't dart over the screen, but I didn't see it as a problem. And when I saw the 4.66, didn't faze me one bit, just because, like you said, I mean, I never ran track. This may surprise you, Skep, but I wasn't like all state track or something. So but I guarantee you, the ball was in the air, both when I played outfield and in some baseball and some slow pitch softball later, or I was in high school. Important. Like you said, the 40 is a track event.
That's all. It's trained. It does
Trained.
not necessarily reflect how the player plays on the field. Watch the film for that.
So, Skep, I want we've been too nice to each other so far. So I'm gonna try to start some static. All right.
Yes, let's do it.
All right, man. Christian Watson. So I'm just gonna be honest with you, man. I see the run after the catch. I see the speed. He was a 4.36 guy that played like a 4.36 guy. I'm not too worried about the level of competition because I don't want to hold that against him, as something that's out of his control. My thing is, this is what I want to spend our time on, is the ball tracking. Like there are too many games or too many instances, I should say, because I only watched 2.5 games of Watson. It's kind of hard to find tape on some of the, non-major schools. But I see where he's late picking up the ball. The corner even picks up the ball before he does. And he's not one of those natural trackers to where he can slow down his body and catch it just over the shoulder or so on and so forth. So I know you know what I mean, but I would just like you to address it because his physical skills and upside are obvious.
All right. So here we go. This
Give
one
it
is
to me.
one. This is one of the last ones but I'm going to talk about Burks. But I want to talk about Burks before him. But we're going to handle this now, and so you're going to be a little disappointed
All
because
right.
we're going to end up agreeing with each other, and then I'm going to try to disagree with you and see if I can disagree with you.
All right.
Early on, I didn't even know anything about Christian Watson. He was brought to me by Adams G on Twitter, and so I went and I looked. And I broke one of my cardinal rules. I looked at highlights. I usually never look at highlights. I want to see you play the game. I want to see down to down. I don't. Everyone's highlights look amazing, but I saw this dude as
Hey,
a wide receiver.
especially on huddled up films. I mean, their highlights look great on my channel. I'm just saying,
I I uh, I saw him get a handoff and take it to the house as a wide receiver. So I was like, oh wow, this kid's interesting. So let me look at it. And so I'm seeing some of these big plays, and I wanted to like him. I actually did like him. And then I went and looked a little bit closer. And what I saw was an athlete, possibly a track guy, who's trying to play wide receiver. And I didn't see a wide receiver that happened to be very athletic and fast. And so for me, he's going to have to end up in the right situation in NFL. And he's going to need time to be able to be effective in the NFL. So I'm not as high on him as I wanted to be. I really wanted to be. But he's more athlete than he is wide receiver. He's very gifted athlete. I like his chances to make plays, but he's probably going to be able to show up in the kick return game, maybe even punt return game if he learns how to catch punts, which is not easy to do. And I won't say jet sweeps necessarily, but you're going to have to get the ball to him in positions where he doesn't have to work so hard to get the ball, and he's allowed to be an athlete. And so he's going to need a creative offensive coordinator who makes the game a little bit easier on him, at least early on in his career. But I can't put him up there with some of the other top guys. And so I want to disagree with you because that's what you wanted. But I'm sorry.
yeah.
On this one, we see this one the same.
Man, I thought that you were going to be really high on him, and that was one of the reasons I wanted to ask you about him. The name that you brought up that you wanted to talk about. I mean, Skep, I have him 55 on my board, and I have actually Sky Moore a few spots above him at 52 because Sky Moore is just so polished and also runs very fast, but he's a pure football player. But at number 52 on my board, I'm going to have plenty of other players higher than him if the Ravens pick at 45 like they're supposed to. Watson would be a guy that I would take a shot on if he fell far enough. Maybe you trade up a few spots in the third round. Maybe you get him at the end of the second. But we have Devin Duvernay on the team, and I believe that he does a good job doing what I see as the floor for Christian Watson is kind of like what you were alluding to. Throw him a bubble screen, throw him a jet sweep, manufacture the man some touches, get the ball in his hands and watch him do work. I think he's actually better after the catch than Duvernay, but it's not we have other needs to fill. So if we're going to add a wide receiver, I do like adding someone that has the upside of a Christian Watson, but I'm just not sold. And I wanted to ask you from your experience, I know you have some experience you don't like to brag about, but ball tracking in particular, is that something that you either have or you don't have? You can get kind of better at it, but you'll never be great at it. Can it be coached? Like, what are your feelings on that?
Yeah, so I play baseball, play center field, just like yourself, play baseball. And I had the opportunity to play wide receiver back in high school. College was more defensive back, quarterback. But Yeah, that's one of those things that you find out early if you have it or not. You could be coached up to improve on it a little bit, but there's nothing like being natural at it. There's nothing like having a knack for it because with everything going on, you have to feel it. You have to feel it. Your body has to respond appropriately. You have to be able to get to where you need to be, and everything's working together, hands and feet and eyes, in order to bring that ball in and be at the right place, right time. And I agree with you that some of the catches that I saw him make, especially on the deeper balls, he was open by like 10 yards. That's not as impressive to me. There are some wide receivers, and I'll give you an example here. Justin Jefferson at LSU worked a lot harder for his production than Chase did. Chase was much more of a natural athlete, and in the pros, they both are effective. But in my eyes, Justin Jefferson, I still think is the better NFL wide receiver if I had to choose a wide receiver to start with. Chase is not bad, but I need to see that you had to work. I need to know what you do when you have to work. And when Watson's put in a position where he has to compete with defensive backs for that ball, I don't know if I feel as confident about him as I would want to with the prospect coming out that might get drafted in the second round. So I'm with you. I'm thinking third round for me now. I had him as high as the second, maybe even late first before I really started looking at him. And I'm going to remove his competition just like you. But that's just not one of those things I think you're going to improve in the NFL by enough to make a difference.
That's kind of how I always viewed it. I saw guys skep, and I know this is going to sound silly because it's not the NFL, but there are really good ball players who just couldn't get it. I've seen this at different levels and guys that have played the game for a long time, whether it be baseball, softball, or football, to where, okay, they improve to where they're not a liability. Maybe they're not giving up interceptions because they can't find the ball or this and that, or maybe they, but they never get to the point where it's natural, where they're going to make a special play and bail their quarterback out. And that's just my own personal experience, but I know you played much higher level than I did. So I had to get your opinion on that, man. I really appreciate it. If the Ravens did take him at 45, I'm sure I'm going to have many other players ahead of him. I wouldn't like that pick. I would say, look, if that's the guy you wanted, you should have traded back to see if he was there. And if not, you got your Myjai Sanders. You could take a Petit Ferrer or a Christian Harris, who I really like. Any of those guys you see there in my yellow section or orange, however your eyes see it. I kind of like the steadying force and the overall ability of those guys to contribute right away. Christian Watson, boom or bust. That's me my last words on him.
Yeah, and I think before the Christian Watson lovers come after me on Twitter after seeing this,
yeah, I'll send them your way.
I will say
I'm going to
that he has the potential to be please.
Sorry,
he has the potential to be a contributor on a winning team, but I just don't think he could be as special as some people want him to be. It's not his fault. It is what it is. This is the NFL. And if you show up with certain limitations, they're going to be around your whole career. An example, Ted Ginn Jr., very fast guy, very good athlete. He was amazing in college, but he had some limitations to his game, and a lot of that had to do with his ability to go up and get balls. And it followed him throughout his whole career. And he was kind of a one-trick pony to a large extent, even though he's a great athlete.
It wouldn't surprise me if one of these teams sees his athletic ability and tries to take him at the end of the first round, like we talked about with Tyler Smith. But you bring up a good point. Remember the burden that Ted Ginn had when he first came into the league. I forget exactly where he was picked, Skep. If you can correct me on that, you can. But I want to say he was like between 8th and 12th overall pick. And when he was picked, everybody was like, whoa. And then they looked at Ted Ginn as, this is our number one, our stud of the future, our all-pro. And really, he was a better returner and not a complete receiver, kind of like what we're talking about with Watson. So I like that comparison, and I think that if you reach on Christian Watson and take him ahead of where he could struggle with some of that pressure of being a franchise guy, I agree with you. I would like to see him easily worked into the offense, give him some touches here or there, and let him ease his way in and be a comfortable piece and comfortable in his own skin.
Well, a comp for him is McCole Hartman. If he's able to exist in that range, third wide receiver option, he may not have his confidence rocked too hard to start his career. So
there you go. And you know what? If he's a McCole Hardman, he's got two other guys ahead of him. There's going to be teams that don't have a third corner that can cover him or can cover somebody else. So he would help a team if he's brought into that role. I love it. You know, if he's brought in as a third receiver somewhere, he's got a chance to really ease himself in and build some confidence. So yeah. So what about you mentioned Treylon Burks? You've been watching him for a while, huh?
Yes, he's been on my radar for a couple of years now. So let me get this out of the way when it comes to Treylon Burks. So our wide receiver history with the Ravens is well documented. The lack of success is well documented. And in recent years, more the lack of interest in joining the Ravens when you're a top-notch wide receiver is well documented. But I'll say this. I said this in the spaces the other day. Mike Tomlin, one of my favorite coaches in the NFL, even though he's in the same division, he has a famous quote of saying, "We don't want hostages, we want volunteers." And for the Baltimore Ravens, we don't have that luxury. We need hostages. Okay, we're not getting volunteers, so we need hostages, and we're going to have to draft them. And we just hope that they develop Stockholm syndrome, and they develop a great affinity for the Ravens after getting drafted here. So I look at the top receivers and guys who can make impact, and what I look at with Treylon Burks is his versatility. Here's a guy at 6'3", 220 or whatever he is, somewhere in that range, big guy. Anquan Baldwin size, if you will. Some people even mention him and Anquan Baldwin. I don't like that. Anquan Baldwin is an all-time great, and he has some traits, but to straight up compare him to a great like that, I don't like to do that. But he definitely has some traits. His ability to play in the slot and play on the outside is impressive for a guy that big. And what's even more impressive for a guy that big is when you watch and see how quick his feet are when he's working in the slot. He does not move like a guy that big. He doesn't have a problem creating leverage and putting defensive backs in weird positions. And against Alabama, he put up 225 against Alabama. And that's no slouch. He did well against LSU. He did well in the SEC in general, one of the toughest college conferences in college football. And here's a guy playing at Arkansas where his quarterbacks changed a few times, and he still maintained his effectiveness. And there's a catch that he made against Alabama that most people wouldn't really pay attention to that stood out to me. Okay. And a lot of people look at maybe the ball, he went deep and was back shoulder and he out-jumped the guy. No, that's not it. Maybe the one where he caught the out route, stiff-armed the guy, went in. That's not it. There was a play where he went and ran a dig route. And right. there was a linebacker that settled underneath him, safety over the top. He cut in between the two of them, and just as he cleared the linebacker, the quarterback threw the ball. And so he came out, he just cleared, and he went and he caught that ball, kept his feet, stiff-armed somebody, and kept going. Now, he didn't get a whole lot of yards, but those are the kinds of plays you're going to have to be able to make in the NFL because you're not going to have crazy space. What do you do when the junk is around you? What do you do when you have to work to get open? And when you watch Treylon Burks' tape, unlike most top wide receivers, because he's one of the bigger threats on his team, one of the few threats, he works. He works to get open. He's doing orbit motions. He's lined up in the slot. He's outside. He's all over the place. And he never loses confidence. He never gets bored. He never gets frustrated with the fact that he has to work so hard from so many different places on the field just to get touches. And I like that because now this is a guy that's going to allow an offensive coordinator to be more creative with him, for one thing. And also, he could possibly accept not being the guy showing up because he's used to having to work to get his few touches. And in the time in between him getting his touches, he is a willing blocker. So he stays mentally engaged in the game, not just when he's getting the ball, but when others are getting the ball. And so I like that. I like that in a wide receiver, not just for the Ravens, just in general. I like a wide receiver that's going to do the tough, dirty stuff and keep his head.
That's going
What
to
do you
be
think about
important. That's going to be important for anybody that we select at wide receiver if we do, because, and I mean, let's face it, we're a running team and we also throw to our tight end a lot. You have Hollywood's established. His targets aren't going anywhere. You just drafted Bateman. He's going to, if you don't get him, has earned more targets. But even more so to me, Skep, the intangible is as far as you notice when I watch a player, I'm only watching 2-3 games because I got through 234 players this year. So I appreciate this information from you is what I'm trying to get at without stumbling over my words. I don't get to see them day in and day out or pay attention or say, oh, Arkansas is coming on. Let me go ahead and catch that game. So that's valuable information that I would not have known. I've seen the blocking. I've seen the contested catches. I think that's why people try to compare him to Bolden, because Baltimore hasn't had a guy that could catch through contact like Treylon Burks does. So I appreciate that. So I'm going to give you my concerns. I'll have a couple other questions for you, but you mentioned his feet being good and his ability to line up in the slot and really manipulate and use his leverage. I see his 40 time was 4.5 something. That made sense to me. But when he broke away and was in the open field against Alabama, I could not believe my eyes with his build-up speed was just crazy. I worry about him getting separation or playing, what's his feel for zone, I guess is what I'm going to ask you, because with Lamar Jackson as your quarterback, you're not going to see a lot of man-to-man, which negates his need to be so quick. You don't have to be quick. You can be Mark Andrews, quick and still find space in the zone. So have you seen him play? The college game is full of zone now. What are your impressions of him finding some space over the middle? Because I would really be interested in a target like that.
So that's the thing I find impressive about him, because that play that I mentioned against Alabama, that was against zone, because he's going to need to be able to do that if he's going to be effective playing for a team like the Ravens. Because like you say, he's not going to get to be one-on-one a lot. He's not facing man a lot. And that's work. It is work to try to beat zone. It's not fun. Receivers would much rather go man-to-man, one-on-one, and let's see who's the baddest dude. But having to navigate through the traffic and the trash, especially when you're the main target for your quarterback, it can be frustrating, because sometimes the zone works. Sometimes your quarterback isn't able to buy enough time to wait for you to come open. And so I think that's something he needs to improve upon. I mean, it's not like he's amazing, but he has handled it well for a guy playing in the tough conference that he's playing in, being relatively young and having quarterbacks change on him quite often, and still being able to be effective in putting up numbers. His numbers haven't dropped as a result of that. And he has faced zone. But I think he's handled it well. And that's part of the stuff that I actually respect about him, is that he's already doing the things he's going to have to be able to do in the NFL if he wants to be effective.
So, Skep, where would you rank him among wide receivers? I'm not sure if you're a rankings person or not, but I got Drake London on my list. I got Wilson on my list, and I got Olave ahead of him. And then I have Burks and Jamison Williams, as you can see there on your screen, right there in the purple. I predict they're going to go in the first round. But how do you match him up against his peers? How do you match him up as far as a fit for the offense? Do you think I'm a little low on him? Do you think should I switch him with Olave? Should I switch him with Wilson? If it was your big board, where would you about to have him?
So with me, when it comes to wide receivers, I can look at them as individual talents and rank them. But when it comes time to actually draft them to your team, the fit has to be there. And so
yes,
there are guys that are much more polished wide receivers than Burks, much more effective at the route running and stuff. But we don't have an offense that will be able to take advantage of them or be ready for a guy like that as much. We need guys that can help outplay the scheme of our offense. that could get more juice out of the scheme of our offense. And I feel like a Burks or even a London to some extent um, could do that. I would have Burks as maybe my fourth or fifth wide receiver as far as rankings. And so I could see Burks in the 20s. I could see him in the 20s. I don't see anyone taking a chance on him in at 13 or anything like that. I think some early mocks said that. I just think there's other wide receivers that might go before.
Okay.
But
So we're on the kind of the same page with that. We're on the same page because I got London. I got London #1 because of that. They're like and I don't want to demean Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave by calling them cookie cutter, but like it's becoming kind of cookie cutter what the league is looking for. They want that 6 foot to 6'1", 190-pound route runner, really smooth. And to me, Skep, these guys are coming out more plentiful every year. They're not running backs anymore. They're receivers. Back in our day, you'd be carrying the ball 20 times. Not now. They're smooth route runners. They're coming out more polished than ever. So what I like about Burks, why I have London first, what I like about Burks, and I think Jamison Williams is a little different than that too, is that they bring something different to where why I like Pickens, in this draft too. I like this wide receiver class, but it seems like I say that every year. But specifically this one, you have London, you have Burks, you have Jamison Williams, you have Pickens. Those are different types of dudes, man. Like, they're not route running specialists that need to be in a Sean McVay offense to really catch 80 balls and flourish. Like, you're going to have to use Drake London if you put him on this team, or else you're just, you're not using the players to your best ability. So I love that. I love that little ad. So Skep, we're kind of, the burgers are burning. We can't be here all day, but how about, can I throw a bonus player at you? Can I throw one more and get your opinion?
One more. Yeah, I'll do that. Let's do it.
All right, sweet. So the big man, Jordan Davis. First off, general question. Is he more like Haloti Ngata, Vita Vea, and Ndamukong Suh, or is he going to be limited, struggle with his weight, and be a 2-down, just a stud on 2 downs, but a 2-down player nonetheless? If you had to weigh the percentages or the odds on each, if you could play along with my question, I appreciate that, man.
Okay. So the way I look at it is he could easily fall victim to having weight issues and that affecting his effectiveness in the NFL. But he has already shown that he's disciplined enough to get his weight down. And he's not getting paid millions of dollars yet. Now, maybe at the back end of his career, maybe he might get lazy again. But I think that he's a motivated kid. And as I said earlier, that Devin Lloyd potentially could have a better NFL career than his college career. I think the same could be true with Jordan Davis.
Whoa.
I didn't think that at first until I actually started really looking at him. And you have to consider the teammates that he was playing with and what he was asked to do. And in some ways, he was asked to help them out. It wasn't about making Jordan Davis a star. He just happened to be one. But he made life easier for his teammates. And that primarily seemed to be his job. Once he's in the NFL, keeping his weight down, I am confident that his athleticism, his commitment to getting better might serve him well. And some team might find a guy like, what's my guy for the Tennessee Titans? The really disruptive?
Jeffrey Simmons, yeah.
Yeah, they might find a very disruptive guy on their roster that is a handful to deal with. And so it's quite possible. I think that if I had to say, I'd say that he leans more towards having the potential to approach the Ndamukong Suh disruptive type player than being a guy who had weight issues and went the way of, some of the guys with the potential of the past.
Cool. My guess is he's going to go in the top 10 because one of these teams, Skep, is going to see him like that. Be like, look, we're going to come in, we're going to get him on a good nutrition program. And as a matter of fact, something that he said that our resident Georgia Bulldog expert, somebody you probably know really well, Jake Vogel.
Yeah.
Friend. Yeah, I know, friend of the show and friend of Skep. He made a kind of serious statement. Jordan Davis did. Jake told me about it. but basically said Jordan Davis was like, look, man, I know when you're that big, it's bad for your health. He said something like, I want to live a long, healthy life. I'm not going to let myself, get to 360 pounds again. And, you never know what's good interview material or if they're saying the right things or somebody told them. But that sounds genuine to me, man. Like you're talking about your health, your long-term health. So he's right. The bigger guys, it's tougher for them on their heart and everything else. So I don't know. I can't put him any higher or any lower than where I have him on my board. I think that if he's sitting there at 14 and all the players that I have ahead of him are gone, you have to take him because the upside is too good. And the floor, Skep, you're going to get a dominant 2-down player. But, I do worry about, okay, Skep, it's we're up by 4. There's a minute 58 left, or, they have no timeouts, minute 45 left. Can you run Jordan Davis out there in a hurry up and make that stand? Or is this like, okay, well, your first round draft pick's going to have to ride the bench in this scenario?
So here's 2 things, Jason. And so this is why I'm confident that Jordan Davis can be more than what he's been. First off, he played at like 385 at times. He was a gigantic human being. He was up there. He was a really big kid. But by the time it got to the combine and such, he got his weight down. He ran a very fast 40 time as a result of that. And that level of commitment is not easy. It is not easy. That lets you know he's mentally dialed in. That means that every day he's making decisions, thinking about his future. And so that's encouraging to me. There have been guys in the past who had to get their hands smacked about their weight, even though they were a highly touted prospect and everyone's rooting for them, but they just could not get their diet together. It could be a struggle. And so he showed that level of commitment. That's the first thing. The other thing is that we have to be careful that we don't judge players and assume they can't do something just because they didn't do it. Just because his role wasn't that at Georgia doesn't mean he can't be that moving forward. And so I think that he's earned my patience, my ability or willingness to give him the benefit of the doubt that he's on the right track and that he's committed to being more than what he was at Georgia. And what he was at Georgia was pretty dang good. And so that's where my head is when it comes to Jordan Davis.
I like it. And, something that was pointed out to me where I went back and watched a 2020 game. I believe it was 2020. It was either 2020 or 2019 of him was somebody pointed out that he had progressed in his hand usage and some of the technical stuff, like you were talking about earlier. Jordan Davis has always been bigger and stronger than the guy across from him, probably since he started playing football. But I did notice that it wasn't like an Adafio way type of improvement from year to year, but he was getting better at kind of stringing some moves together, getting that club together, getting the hand fighting right, being able to to bull rush and get low. So I do see some upside in his game as a pass rush, but it's kind of like obvious, where you stand on it. You either think he's a superstar or you view him as a 2-down player, and how the difference in between the values there, Skep. So yeah. I wanted to ask you any final thoughts on the draft as we wrap this up. Anything you got, man? I would just really appreciate having you here. So anything you're thinking about strategically or whatnot, go ahead and give it to me.
Okay, so first off, I want to thank you again for having me on your show.
Man, thank you.
I love you. Much respect.
Love you too.
I've said this before, just in the same way that last season was a historic season, a season unlike one that we've ever witnessed with so many competitive teams. I think that this draft is going to produce more successful NFL pros than most drafts that we've ever experienced in our lifetime. This is a deep draft. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be crazy. Every single pick is going to be one that you're waiting to see. And I am encouraged because I don't think that we can screw this up. I think that with the amount of picks that we have, I personally, if we don't have somebody that we absolutely love at 14, I am a fan of trading back and also trading up. Trade back and get more picks in the first round, and let's trade up from the fourth round into the third, and let's try to get as many picks as we can in the first 100 picks of this draft. Because there's so much depth to this draft that you want to get as many bites at the apple in those top 100 picks to improve your roster. We didn't get a chance to prove ourselves greatly through free agency, but I love the Williams pick. I love Moses, but we can swing big here in the draft. And so there's opportunity there.
And I'm going to echo your point, Skep, by putting my board up on the screen one more time. And just imagine this, guys. Now look at that. I have 69 picks here that I consider a second round grade, a true second round grade. So when Skep's talking about that top 100, you best believe, Skep, at pick 100, which the Ravens actually pick exactly at pick 100, there's going to be probably 10 guys from that yellow section available at that time. Not to mention, we're going to pick a few picks later because we have an early pick in the fourth round. So when you're talking about the opportunity to get better, everybody's list is going to look different. Maybe you got guys like Kobe Bryant, Pierce, Cook, Marcus Jones, Drake Jackson. Maybe you have them higher on your board, but the fact is, Skep, no matter what kind of board you make, those guys will be left over in the fourth round. So, Skep, I really appreciate you, man. Thanks for all the kind words. And maybe next time we can disagree, but you know what they say, man, great minds think alike. So we might just be stuck. Yeah, we might just be either that or the other way. I'm going to say great minds, though. I'm going to say great minds for now. So right. With that, I'm going to say thank you to our football family. Love you, my football family. And with that, Skep, can you please sign off for us? Say goodbye to the people, man.
Hey, thanks for having me in. Goodbye.